Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here this evening. It is 6:31, I believe, so we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Appreciate you all being here. I will note for the record that everyone on council is present and accounted for, except for Councilwoman Richard. Unfortunately, she could not be with us this evening. If you will, we'll begin this meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and join us. First item up on the agenda this evening will be the consent agenda. And first and only item on the consent agenda is the council meeting minutes from the meeting of July 20th, 2020. Is there anyone on City Council who would like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion. We have a motion by Councilman Burnett and a second by Councilman Merkel. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass unanimously. Next item up on the agenda are our public hearing items, and we have 3 of those items. First item on the agenda is item A, V-20-01/E-20-02, Midgar self-storage parking variance and height exception. Mr. Woodman, I believe you have the floor on this one.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The first item before you this evening is a variance and exception to allow for the construction of a 3-story, 91,000 square foot climate-controlled self-storage facility on 14.9 acres. A variance is requested to reduce the required number of parking spaces from 91 to 28 spaces, and an exception is requested to increase the building height from 35 feet to 36 feet 4 inches. The subject property, and I have the location map up on the overhead, the subject property is located at 11425 Morris Road, and that's at the southeast corner of Old Milton Parkway and Georgia 400. Property is zoned light industrial and office institutional and is currently undeveloped with a significant amount of floodplain impacting the property. The proposed self-storage use is located on the portion of the property zoned light industrial and is only allowed within that zoning district. Surrounding properties are zoned light industrial and office institutional to the south. That's the Avanti Senior Living Facility project. Office professional to the north, which is an undeveloped property, and then office institutional and community unit plan to the east, also undeveloped property. Of course, Georgia 400 is located to the west. The comprehensive land use plan designation of the property is corporate office. The Unified Development Code requires 1 parking space per 1,000 square feet for industrial uses, which includes the climate-controlled self-storage facilities. The applicant is proposing to reduce the parking from 91 to 28 spaces. However, there is not a land set aside for the additional parking. Parking variances for self-storage facilities and data centers have been granted in the past. However, when staff has recommended approval, it has been subject to a condition requiring that land be set aside to accommodate the additional parking in the future. Unified Development Code, with respect to the exception, the Unified Development Code has a maximum height of 35 feet in the light industrial district. The applicant proposes a 3-story building at 36 feet 4 inches, and that first floor height is 15 feet. The second floor and third floor heights are 10 feet 8 inches. According to the applicant, the approval of the height exception would allow for the larger first floor height in order to accommodate fire access. They do have the building that overhangs a portion of the driveway. This is the applicant's site plan. As I mentioned, it is a pretty large property. It's almost 15 acres. However, the developable area of the property is contained on the west side of the property. So there is a driveway that has been constructed, and that was constructed by the Avanti Senior Living Facility on the south end of this property. They constructed that driveway between the former gas station and the Waffle House at Morris and Old Milton Parkway, and that provides access to this point. The applicant, if this was approved, would have to construct a driveway over to the area that is developable on this site. Again, the site plan is depicting a 3-story, 91,000 square foot building. I mentioned how the access would be to that part of the property. And it is about 10% of this site that is actually buildable due to the stream buffer and floodplain. There are 28 parking spaces you can see surrounding the building. Of course, I mentioned 91 are required for the property, and there is not available land for the additional set aside in case additional parking is needed or if the use changes. And additionally, there's not any adjacent buildable parcel that could accommodate the additional parking. And then the only other thing would be that there is the stormwater facility is proposed. It's shown on another site plan within this impervious setback area here to the east of the building. This is the applicant's building elevation. This is the elevation that would face Georgia 400. The building is primarily brick with some what appears to be ephes, although the materials are not labeled. If there are questions about that, I'm sure the applicant can address that. And I did want to just point out there's some parapets on these elevations. On a previous elevation that the applicant submitted with the initial application, there were dimensions provided on those elevations, and the parapets ranged in height from 3 foot 4 inches to 10 foot 10 inches. So it is recommended that if this is approved, that the design review board review those final parapet heights and that they're the minimum necessary to screen any rooftop equipment. This item was shown to the public at the CZIM held on December 11, 2019, and there were no public comments on the sign-in sheet. Staff has reviewed this proposal and finds that it could support the requested parking variance if land was available outside of the floodplain to build the additional parking. As I mentioned, the past parking variance approvals for climate-controlled facilities and data centers have required a land set aside to accommodate a change of use or need for additional parking. The height exception appears to be the minimum necessary to accommodate the fire access around the building. If approved, conditions are recommended requiring that structure to have the appearance of an office building and prohibiting signage facing Georgia 400. And because there is no land set aside, staff is recommending denial of the applicant's request. And that concludes the staff presentation. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Do we have any council questions? Councilman Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Michael, can you define climate-controlled self-storage in the UDC?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes, so the UDC defines storage climate-controlled as a facility consisting of a building or group of buildings that contain individual storage units of varying sizes in a climate-controlled environment where customer access is through a lobby and where no commercial transactions or activities take place other than the rental of the storage units. And I have that definition if we need to put it up on the overhead.
Do you mind?
Sure.
One more question, Mr. Mayor. No commercial transactions Can you just dig a little deeper on that one for me?
So, the applicant did provide some markups of the recommended conditions if this were to be approved. I know one of those conditions that staff was recommending was that there be no moving truck rentals from the facility. That is consistent with other variance approvals at other climate-controlled facilities in the past. And so if you're reading this definition, you'll see that definition is intending to restrict or limit that type of use at this type of facility.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions from council on this item? Councilman Binder.
When you were going through the parking calculation needed, how much of it was, because it's two uses, right? So, what is it, auto rental or utility truck rental and storage? I don't know what the official use for the rental part is, the U-Haul.
So when staff reviewed this application, there was nothing in the initial application speaking to the moving truck rental. That only came to our attention when we received the applicant's amended letter of intent and markups of the recommended conditions about the middle and end of last week. So the actual parking count would be 1 per 1,000 square feet for the climate-controlled facility. But a truck rental or moving truck rental company would require 1 per 100 square feet of office space for that use. So there's nothing, I've not received anything from the applicant with respect to that particular use and how much space that would demand. I would say that I believe that the applicant's markups talk about 4 trucks, and they do, I think in one of these renderings you see some of the moving trucks parked, or what appears to be the moving trucks parked in those parking spots. So there would be additional than the 91 required for the climate control.
So you have not had the opportunity to calculate it because you just
I
found
have
out the
not.
information.
I have not been provided any information with regard to the square footage that would be to the particular use of the auto rental. But remember, per the definition, it wouldn't be allowed within that use.
What's the use called for a U-Haul rental?
It is referred to as, it's called auto and truck rental or leasing in our code.
Auto sales and leasing?
It's called auto and truck rental or leasing.
If you get time when you come back for comments, if you could just help me find that, or where that, 'cause I'm looking at the code right now to see what it is.
Gotcha.
And because I'm on a different screen, can you tell, so it's required 90 spaces, and they're asking for how much?
Just the storage facility portion of it requires 91 parking spaces, and
Okay.
they're providing 28 parking spaces on the site plan.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from council for staff? Thank you, Michael. Would the applicant like to come forward at this time?
Let us plug in. You ready?
Whenever you want, you just hit the forward button.
I'll let you drive.
All right.
I got you. Mayor and members of the city council, I'm Don Rollator, 1865 Lockaway Drive, Suite 601, Alpharetta, Georgia. I'm here tonight on behalf of Midgard Self-Storage, Alpharetta, Georgia, LLC, which owns this property. I'm here with Steve Rowe on behalf of AEC, and together we will make this presentation. The requests are for a parking variance to allow a total of 28 parking spaces and a height variance to exceed the permitted building height of 35 feet to be 36 feet 4 inches. The property where the development is planned is zoned LI unconditional. Storage facility is a permissible use in the LI district, as is vehicle rental, sales, storage, etc. Midgard Self-Storage Alpharetta, Georgia LLC owns this property. It's big. It's 14.9 acres on the southeast corner of Georgia 400 and Old Milton Parkway. It's a mess. It has one reasonable building pad on the property, and otherwise it is a hodgepodge of stuff. So at this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to Steve Rowe basically and let him describe to you the topography, the site, and the building location. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Steve Rowe with AEC, 50 Warm Springs Circle, Roswell, Georgia. I'll quickly walk you through the site and the constraints. The first thing I want to start with was the constraints. Michael touched on this, but I wanted to kind of graphically show you what the issues are on the site. The areas in pink are the floodplain areas of the site. That encompasses a lion's share of the property itself. That's both FEMA and city floodplain, so it's the future floodplain as well as the FEMA floodplain. The areas in blue are your stream buffers, the city and state required stream buffers. So as you can see, there's some overlap there, but the stream buffers take up additional property within that. And then the third constraint on the site is the Georgia 400 zoning buffer, the 60-foot undisturbed buffer along Georgia 400. When you kind of combine all of those issues, we have about a little less than 1.5 acres of developable land on the entire property, which makes it very difficult to kind of fit this in. So what we did is we tried to get real creative with both access and with the way the building sits on the site. So the building sits on the high and dry land, which is really not much, as you can see. And able to get there, we had to skirt the edge of the property with a little road to be able to get around. We're going to have to extend the Georgia 400, or the culvert that comes under Old Milton Parkway, and extend the stream. We'll come across that area, access the property to the front. And to be able to get the square footage that we needed on the project, we actually had to have the second and third floors elevated above so that the first floor was pulled back and that a fire truck can ring the entire property. So the area underneath the building up along Georgia 400 would actually allow a fire truck to pass up and under through there. I've already talked with Casey with the city fire department, and he is fine with this. He's reviewed the site plan and was in approval of how we're going to attack the firefighting on the project. This image kind of gives you an idea, and what I did is I grabbed an average area along the off-ramp coming on 400 if you're heading northbound wanting to get off at Old Milton Parkway. And you can see where I drew the cross-section line, and it shows you where the actual cars for the off-ramp are, the downslope to the area, and then the natural buffer that we maintained, and then the building itself. As you can see, the building itself is only going to be a little more than 20 feet above. It's actually going to be about only a house level above the road elevation. And there's an abundance of trees along there, both in Georgia 400 right away, as well as in the required buffer that will be maintained through that area. So I don't think there's going to be really any issue of any domination of that architecture along the drive coming in. So you probably won't even notice it's there because it's going to be down below you, and you'll be driving by up as your grade rises towards Old Milton Parkway. And the 1 foot 4 inch height variance that we're asking for will be undetectable along this whole area. From all the road frontages, you won't notice that extra foot and a third will be required for that. And the whole reason for that required foot and a third is to be able to allow the fire truck to be able to get around. That our first floor is elevated to be able to allow that 14-foot clearance that the fire truck requires along that drive under. At this point, we can kind of walk through the architecture. Like you said, here's the building architecture from the Georgia 400 side. It's predominantly brick with some precast or EIFS accents along the cornices of the above, and then some punch outs to be able to allow to break up the brick a little bit. This is on the opposite side of Old Milton, so this would be on the back side of the property towards the creek, looking towards Old Milton Parkway. You can kind of see the drive under on the lower left-hand side of the page with that area. This is the opposite side of Georgia 400, so this would be what I consider the back of the property, which would face the major creek, the Focilla Creek that comes through the major property. The opposite side of Old Milton Parkway, or this is the side that would face Old Milton Parkway, granted about a football field away, but it would be along the Old Milton Parkway frontage. And then this is actually the side that's on the corner between Old Milton and Georgia 400. So you can kind of see the building blends from a scale of the natural trees that are around it, and the topography, it's kind of pushed down on the upper floors to allow the bottom floor to be accessible higher. At this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Don to kind of let him walk you through some of the parking requirements and other data that we've got on this project.
Stay with me up here.
You got it.
That one will do right there.
I can do this one, then we can go back.
That's first. The most important request in this application is to allow a total of 28 parking spaces in lieu of the 91 required by the UDC. City of Alpharetta has historically granted parking variances for climate-controlled self-storage facilities. They understand that these facilities require minimal parking. We have a list in our presentation of the approved spaces for other facilities in the city. If you look at what's on the screen right now, 21, 5, 18, 13, 2, and 5. Beyond that, there's no reservation of any other spaces in this city. There's also a study that was done with V1614, which you approved for a self-storage facility. And that study, which was made part of your zoning file, showed that the average parking spaces for a climate-controlled storage facility was 7. It listed all the ones in the area at that time. The last facility you approved, which was V1614, Steve, I'm going to ask you to put that on the board. This is where I want us to talk seriously tonight, because I want to be treated exactly like that applicant was treated. If we're going to reserve parking additionally, then let's do it like we did in V1614. Steve, it slipped away from the page we had it on, the one with the red line. There we go. How does the city compute this area? If you read in this highlighted paragraph, you'll understand. Variances to required parking for storage facilities have been granted for other properties in the city, and the applicant provided a parking study for the other storage facilities within Alpharetta and the surrounding area. We just showed you. The data concludes that an average of 7 parking spaces are provided at similar facilities. Staff researched other municipal parking codes and found that most require 1 parking space per 3,500 square feet for storage facilities, which would require 29 spaces for this proposal. And that's what staff did. If you take this application at 91,000 square feet and you figure it at the same formula, 3,500 square feet per parking space, we need a total of 26. We have 28. So my statement there is to just treat the applicant fairly and treat the applicant like you've historically treated everyone else in the city. There is no place in the city, there is no place in North Fulton County where a climate-controlled storage facility has any more parking spaces than what you see on these 2 sheets that we provided to you. The owner of this facility owns 46 facilities in 6 states. They have substantial experience in the climate-controlled storage facility business. Their numbers say they need 14. So if we're providing 2 things, double what they say they need and more than the way you compute additional parking you want provided and the way you've treated other applicants in the city, then I submit to you that this should be approved. briefly, because everyone seems concerned about it. The rental truck facility availability, having 46 facilities in 6 states, they've come to understand that to serve your customer, the average customer shows up and says, I want to move my stuff into your storage facility. I don't have a truck. Well, we have 4 sitting right here. We'll rent you one. Is there a separate U-Haul rental facility in the building? No. Is there a separate whole facility that rents trailers and vans and trucks and gadgets? No. They provide a specific service to this operator that says, if you need a truck, let us rent you a truck and you go to your house and load your stuff, bring it here and put it in. That's why they're there. Can we screen it from 400? If you can see this place from 400, sure, we can screen it and we can put it around the backside. But from a practicality side, it's just a good service. This city has created so much high-density housing in this area. And if you're familiar with that housing, you know that storage space is at a premium. Between Thompson Street, Avalon, west of Main, and everything else that's come here, wonderful development. A lot of those people need a place to put their stuff. You got a little attic space or a little space in the back of your garage, but that's it. So, is there a need? Yes. Is there harm to the health, welfare, safety, concerns of the citizens of Alpharetta? I don't think so. Is it a pretty building? It looks just like an office building. The only difference is it doesn't have any traffic. It doesn't have light pollution, and it doesn't have noise pollution. It's a quiet neighbor. Let's go a little further with the questions. What if we really wanted to put a humdinger of a key use here because it's such a statement to the city? This site's so miserable, there's not room to do that. If you put on this same footprint a 10-story office building, you couldn't park it. And you have to park office. So it has no other reasonable use. And this use is permitted by the LI code. And on the parking situation, my statement is that Steve Rowe has applied the same formulas to this property as you've applied to the others, and we would wind up with more parking than any other climate-controlled storage facility in the city, except maybe with the other allocated spaces, the one down on West Side may have 29 and we may have 28. But when you boil it all down to just practicality, that's it. You know, do we want to play cute and say, well, there's going to be a U-Haul individual there? I don't know, there isn't. Maybe one of our employees. He's got to have office space. Well, we got 2 more spaces than we need. If we've got 26 we need under this formula, and we need 28, they're there. I think it's a hollow argument because it's just a service to the facility. If you want to put restrictive languages that said we wouldn't operate a full U-Haul facility, we wouldn't rent trailers, we wouldn't do bumper hitches, all that stuff, we have no problem with it because it's the truth. The truth is it's just a service to the people who would use this facility. And the facility is under a great deal of demand. I can't tell you how rapidly I think it would lease up, but I know a lot of people in that Avalon, Thompson Street, West of Main area up there, they're dying for space. And what happens? You rent it, you go up there that day and you put it in there, and you almost never come back. If you have storage space, you think how often you visit it. I have one up on Highway 9 in Forsyth County for office storage. My ladies know how to get there. I've never been there. And they might go once every 6 months. So it's a palatable use because it's, number 1, permitted. Number 2, it's in line parking-wise with the others in the city. And number 3, it's just a nice idea. It's attractive. It does what you want to do without being offensive. Now, let's talk just briefly about the conditions. I'll tell you what we're thinking, and then we'll discuss it as much as you want to. There we go. All right. Retaining walls facing Old Milton Parkway, Georgia 400, shall be modular block with color. You're not going to be able to see them, so if we spend the money on brick, I say why, but more importantly, I say let the design review board work that out. Whatever they say goes, but that's our comment there. 9, moving vehicles for hire, shall be leased from the property, period. I've explained to you the reason why. If that's a stick point, let's all discuss it, but It's a service to the people who use the facility. It's not designed to be a full-blown U-Haul facility. If we had wanted that, it's a permitted use in that area. We could have just built a U-Haul facility and gone ahead. If we had not been before city council, there'd have been no variance, there'd have been nothing else. That's why that statement's there. Number 12, wall signs shall not be permitted facing Georgia 400, and all signage shall be approved by the Design Review Board. That's fine. Just as a matter of notice, applicant proposes a wall sign on the south side of the building, which does not face Georgia 400. We're entitled to one under the sign ordinance, and that's the reason for the thought. So, I don't think anybody has any questions to speak of about the height variance. It's necessary and everybody agrees to it. When you talk about the parking variance and you say, well, variances have to have hardships. They do. It's obvious that enforcing 91 parking spaces on this site when nobody else in the business in this area has anywhere near that is a hardship. What does it do? It prevents you from putting the use on the property, plain and simple. Other applicants have been granted parking variances. The city requires 91 parking spaces. Due to site constraints, it's not possible to put them on there, just perfectly candid with you. You could take the first floor of the building, maybe part of the second, and park them indoors, but why? If you're going to have 14 people there, why would you do that? The site is difficult. That's a hardship. It's steep as it can be and full of floodplain. And requiring an unreasonable number of parking spaces on that site is a hardship. It prevents the owner from using the property for an allowable use. Where other property owners similarly situated have been granted a variance, it's a hardship to be denied equal treatment. We don't want any special treatment. Just treat us like you treat everybody else. And Midgard will build you a magnificent facility. And the people in the area will be thrilled because they have a place to put their stuff that won't fit in their new house. So, I think the variance requests are reasonable. The city's granted similar variance requests for climate-controlled storage facilities. There aren't any where they haven't granted them. There's no benefit to the city in denying the variances. Staff response to variance criteria 4 in part reads, quote, approval of the parking variance and height exception should not cause substantial detriment to the public good. The use gives the appearance of an office building without the attendant traffic, noise and light pollution. It's a good neighbor. The use provides a benefit to nearby citizens. The variances, if granted, have no negative impact on the health, safety, welfare, or morals of the citizens of Alpharetta. The applicant is entitled to equal treatment and equal application of the provisions of the UDC. So we'll reserve time for rebuttal if rebuttal is necessary, and we'll be happy to answer each and every question that you have. But our statement beyond that is just treat us like you treat everybody else. Mayor and council, we appreciate the time. We're happy to answer your questions. And if there is rebuttal to be needed, we reserve time for it.
Councilman Burnett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Rollator, I like your tie.
Thank you.
My question for you is, with the parking spaces that you are requesting with that variance, will any of your perceived trucks, moving trucks, I don't know how better to describe them than to say like a Ryder truck or a U-Haul, will they be occupying those spaces, or are those separate?
They would occupy 4 of those spaces maximum.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Rollator, 2 questions. One is about a parking study. I know the staff had mentioned that you would need to get a parking study as others applicants for similar issues have done. Is there any reason why you didn't present a parking study specific for this site?
Punch up the page. There's a parking study contained within the amended letter of intent. It's not 42 pages long, and I'd never had the contact from staff that said we had to have one, but this is the parking study that's contained in the amended letter of intent that we filed this past week.
The jurisdictions that are
Yeah,
surrounding us.
and there's the jurisdictional statements with it and what their requirements are.
Yes, but was that specifically for this site? Or was it just a compilation of,
It's a compilation to explain what would be expected.
so it's not like a traditional parking study that one would normally submit, is that right?
Well, I wouldn't normally submit it if I had a high-intensity major use, I would expect a request from the staff, would you please submit us a parking study? In this case, I have not received such a request. I don't know that Mr. Rowe has either. So it's not automatic or common, it's when you need it. And
Okay.
With 14 spaces being occupied, we didn't exactly look at that as a major parking impact on the city.
Okay. And you also did not include the U-Haul or the rental truck component in the original application. Why is that?
Because we just found out from the client later that that was part of the way their package operates, that they like to provide the U-Haul rental opportunity for their customers.
Okay.
As soon as we knew about it, we included it.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Binder?
Glad Pro Tem Mitchell brought up that parking study. I had a couple questions on that. Have you included when those places have been approved by council or when they were established?
I have a list of all the ones that are approved. The one right here on the screen, Alpharetta Self-Storage within the city limits, is a list of what we can determine are each and every approved climate control storage facility within the city. And those are the parking spaces that they have.
Yeah. I think a couple that I see, I don't think were approved recently, or maybe they were added in to incorporate it as part of Alpharetta. I know a couple of them that I see listed, or maybe I would have trouble getting approved by this council or other councils I've known.
I think the one on West Side Parkway, Mr. Binder, is probably the most recent, V1614 that we spoke to. I think that's the most current.
And do they have the ability to increase parking within their property?
Not beyond 29. They asked for 7 spaces and settled on 8 with a requirement that they provided for a total of 29.
And I hope you'll give me patience. I do have a few questions, and I know
happy.
where you're coming from. But we also have from things that we've approved that maybe we'd like to see or see change. So,
Sure.
So in the application, you'd be okay with having it just four rentals? Just
Absolutely.
the number 4
Yep.
spots? Because I have seen parking storage areas around here where their U-Haul rentals are coming out and parked on the side of the parking
I
lots
agree, and
on the
they've got
street.
trailers and that stuff. We would limit it to rental vehicles for the purpose of loading stored goods into the facility. We'd have no problem with that.
And then, because we have had issues in the past with maybe elevations along 400, which won't be named, but you'll be greeted by them when you come in. You can assure us better on an elevation study that we will not see anything, or I guess my concern is promotional activities that can be seen from there that I've seen with some other auto-related sales or storage.
Yeah, let me let Steve explain the location. What we showed you on the board facility-wise is what we will have. There are no outdoor sales, there are no yard sales, there are no vehicles for sale or storage out there. We're not parking anybody's trucks, boats, or wrecked vehicles.
Yeah,
That is the same thing.
this kind of shows where it sits along here, and as you come up, you're only getting higher, and you're not looking down on the project itself. And that cut is right here where that off-ramp comes through here. Again, the elevation is so it's about 20 feet lower than where we are, so we're kind of creating the situation, and as you get up higher, it's even higher than that. So no, the promotional, I don't think it would be seen if we had it here. So it wouldn't really make sense.
Goes
Or-
with building architecture.
Coming in from the south or coming in from the north, you will not be able to see it because it dips down.
Correct.
Is there,
Actually, the bridge itself for Old Milton will stop you on the southbound route. You
Okay.
won't see it at all. On the northbound, you're sitting lower, and the off-ramp is kind of coming this way. So the only time you might catch a glimpse, and that's be on a passing, is in the wintertime when you're on the off-ramp going towards Old Milton up the hill. But on 400, you wouldn't see it on a normal drive-by.
There.
And and if you do, you're going to see the brick expression through the trees, if anything, through the winter months. During the summer months, I don't think you're going to see a thing.
okay. I'm just very sensitive based on.
I understand.
I was on DRB at the time at other ones, and
Right.
I was told and assured that we wouldn't be able to see, and it's a different
I
page.
I know what you were speaking of, and
And then, on these pictures of the elevations, this is the one that we'd be seeing from 400?
yes, that's the 400, but what you're not seeing here, because you couldn't see it, is if I was standing on the slope, it's down a hill.
Okay.
So yeah, there's 60 to 65 foot trees in that buffer itself, and then there's additional smaller trees in the right of way coming up the hill. So I think there's an ample amount of foliage that's going to block that view.
Is there parking on this side, or where
No,
are
this
these
is
cars
just a
going?
drive-through.
These cars are just driving through?
Yep, you have that area that's underneath that you're driving through, but there's no parking along that edge of the building. So we can kind of look here. So this is the edge that you're talking about, and there's no parking there. Everything's kind of facing the back and facing the side itself.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for the applicant from council? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if there's anyone here that would like to come forward and speak on this matter, now's your opportunity to do so. Seeing no one come forward, we'll close public comment. Do we have any other questions from council at this time? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and call for a motion.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that we approve 20-01/E-20-02 Midgard storage, self-storage variance and exception with these changes to the conditions. 1 through 5 remains as printed in the report. Number 6 would change to interior storage units shall not be visible through windows day or night with final approval by staff. Going down to 9, moving vehicles or vehicles for hire or leased from the property shall not be parked between the building and Georgia 400 or Old Milton Parkway, and shall be limited to 4 vehicles, and the parking area for those vehicles shall be screened with landscaping as approved by DRB. And then I'd like to add a number 14. Sure. The latter part of it. Moving vehicles or vehicles for hire or leased from the property shall not be parked between the building and Georgia 400 or Old Milton Parkway, and shall be limited to 4 vehicles, which shall be screened with landscaping as approved by DRB. And then we'll go on down to all the others remain the same. And number 14 is parapet height shall seek the review and height approval by DRB.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell, a second by Councilman Merkel. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, by substitute, I would like to make a motion to deny V-20-01/E-20-02 Midgard self-storage variance and exception.
We have a motion to deny. I hear no second, so the motion will die for lack of a second. We'll revert to the original motion. Any discussion? Councilman Biner?
Yes, there's been a lot of new information that's come to us, and I'd like to make sure we get this right. I can understand the issues with the property and what's buildable, but with the parking, it's got to get it right. I hear Mr. Rollator's frustrations, but I've seen some storage units been done wrong, and I don't want to see it be done wrong along 400 in Old Milton. So with that, I'd like to table it till our next meeting to get staff and Mr. Rollator to get together, so iron out some of those details. So I make a motion to table.
Second.
I have a motion to table and a second. There can be no discussion about that. So I'll go ahead and call for a vote on the motion to table this item. And I'm sorry, did you say when it would come back off the table?
As early as our next meeting.
So there is a motion and a second to table this item until as early as the next meeting. All those in favor of that motion, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. Councilman Merkel. And the motion to table does pass by a vote of 5-1. So the item will be tabled until such time as it comes off the table as early as the next meeting to give applicants, staff a chance to review the discussion. Next item up on the agenda is public hearing item PH-19-09, Unified Development Code text amendments. This was sponsored by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell. Ms. Cook, I see you coming forward, so I'm assuming this is your item.
Yes, Mayor and Council. This one, it's been so many months since it was workshop, and I think we actually took it to the Planning Commission in March. So a lot of these you may not remember from the workshop, but I'll go through the changes that we're proposing. And a lot of these changes, what we've found is, I think probably the last time we looked at some major changes to the sign ordinance was 15 years ago. And at that time, it was mostly very large signs on retail buildings and in shopping centers. Since that time, what we've found is mostly that they want smaller, more creative signs. You see some that are painted signs, perpendicular signs. And we also have a lot of trails, that are planned at North Point, so it would take them to the back of some of these buildings. So these changes are mostly proposed from what variances that we've seen that are coming forward, where people are trying to take their allowed square footage, being more creative instead of having the one or two large signs. So that's what you'll see on some of these. And then we also have buildings that are built along the roadway that have, multi-access. So you have where they need to be able to see where they're going from the parking lot, but they also need to have that visibility from the roadway. So I'll just walk you through the changes. The first one that we're looking at is a change to subsection 2.6.4, requiring a permit if there is a change to an existing sign, including only a face change. And let's see. So that's here, the 2.6.4A. And also talking with the city attorney today, he actually said that the material change should stay, that there's no reason to remove that word. But what we're looking to do is to remove the last sentence, which says, a change in only the copy of a sign shall not constitute a material change. So what that does, a lot of those are along Main Street that are some of the older signs that are internally lit, or they may be 10 feet tall, but they could be in the ground for 15 years. If they're only changing the business and change the copy area, they don't have to conform to the new guidelines, which say that they should not be internally lit along Highway 9. The reason we bring this up now is because we know that GDOT is doing a lot of improvements. They're actually moving some of the signs along Main Street, so now would be the time to make this change. And that's why we had the workshop so early, because we knew that they were working, some of them were working with GDOT, so we wanted to make sure that they were aware that this was a change we were going to recommend.
As we're going through these, would it be okay to ask questions rather than have her go through the entire list?
I think that's appropriate. As long as no one has any objections, I think it's a lot easier just to take them as we go.
Because I'll probably forget if I don't ask now.
Right, and it'll be hard to keep straight if we're trying to digest them 9 at a time or something like that, so please feel free.
Kathy, Ms. Cook, excuse me, by striking out that last sentence in 2.64A, which reads, a change in only the copy of a sign shall not constitute a material change. By striking that out, we're not saying that a change in copy is a material change.
A change in copy would require a sign permit.
So we are my reading of this is a change in copy, this is an affirmative statement. If you change the copy, it's not material. But the converse is not necessarily true. You can change the copy, and every time it's going to be material?
Yes, so removal of that last sentence, the intent was that if a new company comes in there and they want to change just the name of the company on an existing sign face, they would have to go through permitting. And I can probably show you some
Is there a
examples of
clear
that.
understanding? I know we talked offline today, and I'm still struggling with what copy is. It's not a defined term in here, is it?
It is a defined term in the sign ordinance.
Okay.
And let me see what that is. And Brett is here. If I misspeak, he can run up and say, no. Okay, so copy, here it is. The characters, symbols, graphics, images, letters, words, writing, and/or information or advertising display on a sign surface.
So going back to our workshop days, on this point, if a gas station has a sign and changes the price of the gas on the sign, they're changing the characters, they're changing the copy.
No, because you have that outline of the copy area, and I may have an example.
That's the reason I'm trying to get into the definition of copy here.
Sure.
The character symbols,
You're talking about this?
that would be an example.
Yeah,
To
so
me, by the definition of copy I just read, those are characters and symbols which, if changed, or if the Baptist church, the Methodist church changes the verse of the week for those driving by, I'm trying to
You want
understand.
some clarification as to what, now, to
I
us,
can't square the definition of copy with those types of changes.
sure, and our interpretation is always, this doesn't change, the outline doesn't change, although they may change the number. They still have the blue background, they still have the substantial, although they may change the price. And that's the same thing with the religious facilities. I thought I had a picture of that, but most of those have those where they put the letters on individually, but they're not changing that copy area, only the letters.
So on this point, I'm comfortable that it will be fairly applied. I'm not comfortable that people will feel like it's being fairly applied when they don't get what they want and we get into some gray areas based off that definition of copy. And every change in copy is a material change that requires a business owner to go through a sign permit process.
Well, that's something that we can, if there's enough interest going forward with that, we can clarify to put some exemptions because.
There's a good example.
Yeah, so these areas right here, the copy area is not changing, although they can put individual letters. They're not changing the background. So if you want us to put some additional language in there, we can certainly put additional language.
The more clarity and the more objectivity, the less
Absolutely.
room for gray area and less room for somebody to feel like their business is being subjected.
Right, or worry about
Yeah.
something that it may not. Do you have anything else you want to add? You can go ahead.
I think a couple definitions above that in the changeable copy area.
Okay.
So the changeable area is a different calculation from the copy area. So my interpretation would be the copy area, which is the more permanent part of the sign, would require it, but the changeable, so when the church wants to change their message or the gas station changes the gas price, that's in the changeable copy part that's allowed by the code.
Yeah, so I think what Councilman Hypes, probably if we add, this does not apply to changeable copy board at the bottom of that, I think that would probably,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm on board for meaningful sign permit applications.
Sure.
I'm not on board for every little change to a sign on every character, symbol, graphic, et cetera, necessitates one, and we apply it in some areas and not others.
Right, and you know, we have a lot of signs that are, like I said, they're over, 10 feet tall, but they've been there for 15 years, so now would be the time to get the compliance. And I see what you're talking about. We'll make sure that people understand that we're not talking about that changeable copy. And then we have some, I mean, that, that they're what we call pole signs that are there, and now the code actually says the base has to be the same width as the sign at the top of the sign. So those are some of the things that we're looking to make sure that they come into compliance. And I talked to Brett earlier about areas along North Point, other areas. There may be some that are oversized also as we see redevelopment happen. This will make sure that we bring those into compliance too, because of course they're several years old, over 20 years old.
Does that resolve your question, Councilman Hypes?
Yes, thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Councilman Binder?
As you brought that up, Kathy, about maybe the areas that we really want to take a look at. My concern is having permits for all of Alpharetta, and then having that go through our code enforcement, which does a great job, or go through your staff, and is there a way that we could easily just say, okay, within these areas, this is where it needs permits, just corridors of influence kind of thing? I don't want to add it so it's permits for everybody if we don't need to see it for everybody.
You mean, now, all of the sign permits would, of course, go through code enforcement. You're saying that change this to where it only applies if you change the copy area to corridors of influence?
If you think this sign permit's needed because you'd like to really take a look at North Point and Highway 9, then can we consider having a sign permit? So, because I'm seeing if it's a blade change, it's a sign permit. So if one of the buildings, they have a new tenant, it would be a sign permit.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mentioned those two areas just because those are the areas that are kind of, that we're seeing redevelopment.
Yep.
But I think it does apply for Old Milton Parkway. I think it applies everywhere.
okay.
I mean, but it's up to you.
Any other questions from council at this time?
And I think that, that was one of the big changes that we talked about last time.
Right. Okay. Thank you, and please continue.
All right. Then we just have some small ones about changing the height. I was talking to Brett about when's we looked at trends. We haven't been approving signs that are 15 foot tall in years. So a lot of these are just changes to the 10 feet. And I'll just keep going to the next section if there's not any questions. Then we have illumination of signs, and this one is under 2.6.11, general provisions, and we actually have under illumination of signs, neon shall not be used. That was number 6, and I know at the workshop there was some conversation about this one. I don't know if there's any questions about that.
Excuse me. Any questions from council about 2.6.11, illumination of signs prohibiting use of neon to illuminate signs? Please continue.
All right. Then moving on, this section is actually under the signs permitting in a strip shopping center. And these are what I talked about earlier. We made a lot of changes just to try to break up the signs so they could be used aesthetically and moved along the building, depending on where the Alpha Loop's located, or the greenway or sidewalk. Any questions about this change?
And which one is that in our list?
This would be 5.
Okay. Any questions from council on this item? Seeing none, please continue.
All right. Then this is changing, again, that we're looking at the height because we are just not seeing anything over 10 feet. The error I have on this one is this should have been changed also, so it just coincides with the 10 feet. So, again, for the same reason. And then G, that's just removal. Code enforcement said that they haven't seen anybody take advantage of that. Basically, if you have 4 monument signs that you're allowed and you only want to do 3, then you get to take that square footage and make a larger monument sign. So nobody's taking advantage of that, and I don't think that's something that we want to promote. So we are recommending that that be removed. If there's no questions, I'll move to the next one.
Okay.
And then this is really the same change. We're just making sure that we put it under each category. And then you see we continue on with the rear entrance signs. With the rear entrance signs, we had a lot of it. If you look at the size, we used to allow 8 square feet, but we're recommending that that's changed to 50% of the front-facing sign. If you'll think about, this came up with Studio Movie Grill. If you're coming from the Greenway, an 8 square foot sign, you're not going to see that on Studio Movie Grill, so we thought it was more in line, saying half of whatever you put at the front.
Any questions from council about that item?
And then this quickly, I haven't had any questions about the size. So this is just the change under cinema complexes from 15 to 10. And then a continuation of that, that's still under cinema, I think. Yeah. With the size, we're just not seeing the monument size that we used to see. And then under D, we added that no digital copy is allowed. We haven't allowed digital copy previously at convenience centers, but it wasn't clear in here, so we basically had to spell that out. So that's not really a change, it's already how it's interpreted. The change in this section is buildings, instead of 3 stories or greater, may have a wall sign at the top of the building. We changed it to 2 stories or greater, may have a wall sign located at the top. And it did say 48 square feet on a 3-story building, but now it says 20 square feet per story. So that would be, on a 2-story, of course, 40 square feet. So that would be one sign on one of these standalone buildings. Are there any questions on that?
Not seeing any.
And then moving to the downtown overlay. On the first page, it talks about building ground signs, monument signs. So we changed it to say that maximum height shall not exceed 6 feet. And I think the Design Review Board hasn't approved anything over 6 feet in the downtown for over 10 years. So that's just something, so that people know basically what's going to be approved and what's aesthetically going to match what's approved along Main Street.
And which one was this?
This is in the downtown overlay district. So it starts
Is it on one of the numbered items I
Oh.
have here?
12.
I was just trying to keep it up on that, so I don't have to flip
Yeah.
through all the pictures.
So it's 12.
Okay, thank you. Subsection 2.6.12?
Yes. So
Okay, I just didn't see anything there. It said downtown overlay. That's why I was.
And, so it starts with
Okay, that's
Building
fine. It was
ground
just on
signs.
the summary it didn't. That's
we
why I
didn't
was
add
having-
that as part of where that's located.
That's fine, like I said. Sorry to slow you down.
That's okay. Subsection 2.10.9, North Point overlay. So we deleted subsection C regarding rear wall signs, and that's just because at one time, do I have this? Yeah, here we go. The reason we're deleting it is because it exists in other areas now of the code. It used to be that only in North Point that you could have the rear wall signs, but that's what we've done, is basically put it in other areas of the code. So we don't need to have that. It's not taking away from them, it's just that we put it somewhere else. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have about the proposed changes.
Any other questions from council? Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
So, Ms. Cook, this is all in an effort not just to keep all of Alpharetta beautiful but it's also to treat every business with equality so that the expectations are the same no matter where you are, whether on Main Street or Old Milton or North Point. And also to continue to try and stress this is a nice area. We wanted to keep it that way is that correct?
Absolutely, and as we've seen road projects go through in different areas of the city, so we want people to have it in the code, the expectations, so if they do lose their sign, saving it and reinstalling it may not meet the current code, that type of thing.
Yeah. One of the things that's concerned me is that a new business that complies with our code, they get the advantage of the newest sign, but then somebody else with a bigger, brighter sign has a distinct advantage over the newer business who is in compliance. And so this hopefully will bring it all into the same fair playing ground. So thank you.
And I think you're addressing the trend that you're seeing with all the different variances to have smaller, multiple signs.
Any other questions from council at this time? Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
If there's anyone here that would like to come forward and talk about the sign ordinance changes, now's your opportunity to do so. Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Mr. Jones, would you like to read this ordinance for us?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This is an ordinance to amend Article 2 of the Unified Development Code of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to amend Section 2.6 signs that relates to various sign regulations, to amend the North Point overlay as it relates to signs, to repeal conflicting ordinances, and for other purposes. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Now, I know that there's a lot of moving parts to this motion, so just to get a better sense of how is best to proceed, should we do this as one item, or are there items that we should pull out separately just to kind of speed the process? Any council members have any suggestions on that? Otherwise, we'll just move forward with the motion. Councilman Burnett?
To pose a question to the council, if that's okay, if there are any that anyone would like to have discussed separately as a point of process, if you could identify those, because clearly there are some we will all agree on, allegedly. You can't ever take anything for granted. But to be able to do 6 or 7 with one motion, I would like the opportunity to do that. So otherwise, I'll get out of your way. Thank you.
Councilman Hipes?
Following on Councilman Burnett's suggestion, I would like to set aside for separate considerations 1, 3, and 4.
Okay, thank you. I think the best way to proceed knowing that is probably have a motion, if there's anyone that would like to make a motion along that.
This is the first reading.
Sure.
This is only for discussion in this meeting. At the second reading is when the ordinance will be considered to be adopted by the council.
I'm pretty sure we vote both readings.
Sorry.
That's okay. Just checking. Bob's the referee. Bob says we vote both times.
Come on out.
Now, I do realize that there's typically no public comment on the second reading, but I do believe we vote on both issues. So at this time, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the amendment number 1 to the Unified Development Code as it relates to the sign code. This is just pertaining to 1.
Okay.
And that is to permit required change to require any change to an existing sign, including only a face change, obtain a permit.
Do I have a second for that motion? I have no second, so the motion will fail to approve number 1.
Right, right, but Mr. Hypes wanted to pull 1, but he asked that we do 1, 3, and 4 separately, is that correct?
Technically, to follow up on Councilmember Merkel's statement, he's made a request, but what you're looking for would be a motion to divide the question, dividing numbers 1, 3, and 4, and then handling everything else. So
We can do it that way. I also think the way the Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell went about it is acceptable. I mean, make a motion for anything, and I think that was one way to go about it was to. Right, but I think we have to have a motion to have the discussion about number 1. So we can go about it several different ways, but
just 4.
with a second, then we can either vote on that motion, change that motion, or vote against that motion. So,
I would like a motion to reconsider the pro tem's failed motion.
it didn't fail, it just never got a second, so.
Second.
Does that apply, Mr. Attorney? A motion to reconsider that gets a second?
I would prefer just a renewed motion.
Okay.
Okay,
Do we have,
try it again.
could you please make that motion?
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the amendment to the Unified Development Code as it relates to the sign code, only Section 1, subsection 2.6.4, a permit required, change to require any change to an existing sign, including only a face change to obtain a permit. A motion to approve.
I have a motion. We need a second to have a discussion.
So we can vote on it or discuss it.
Let me go about this differently if there's no second. I'd like to make a motion if that motion failed. Did it fail?
It did not receive a second,
All right.
so it fails
All right.
for lack of a second.
I'd like to make a motion to approve number 1 on the staff report for the signage ordinance changes that relates to 2.64.4.a with the change that the word materially remains in the ordinance, and that a change in only the, was it copy area? Not copy, but
Changeable.
copy.
Copy area.
Okay, so my motion is to approve 2.6.4.a as presented with the word materially in there. The last sentence stricken, if that's a word, which says a change in only the copy of a sign shall not constitute a material change. That comes out. The rest of it remains as is. With the inclusion of a change in the copy area shall constitute a material change. So that's my motion.
I'm just seeing if I can recite that appropriately. So the motion is,
I'll take it. I'll try to rerun it.
if you don't mind,
Yes.
just because I took
All right.
some notes, but I'm not sure I got all of it right.
I move to approve section 2.6.4.a with the word materially remaining in that section, taking out the last line, which is currently stricken in what was presented, and inserting a change in the copy area of a sign shall constitute a material change.
Are we all clear on that motion? And that is to approve subsection 2, well, we don't have a second yet, but just to be sure that we're all on the same page, 2.6.4.a, approve that with changes to material, the word materially remains, the last sentence is stricken, and the change in the area is material.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we do have a motion and a second. Any discussion at this time? I'm not sure our shortcut is working as intended. Any discussion about this item?
I guess it's more of a question. Are we going to just do this 13 times?
I think the intention was to identify 3 of them that Councilman Heitz addressed as being concerns, and then go through. So the motion is to approve, as explained by Councilman Heitz, with 3 changes he indicated. All those in favor of the motion, please vote yes, otherwise vote no. And it does pass 5-1. Okay, the second item, I believe, that we had identified was number 3 on the list provided by staff.
Yes,
I'll
sir.
entertain a motion at this time.
Okay, if I could skip over 2, and I'll include it in the section 2, 5 through 13 for one motion on all those. But now we're at number 3, section 2.6.8, 29, prohibitive signs and devices, prohibit neon signs with exposed neon lighting and any illumination used to create a neon tube look. A motion to approve this prohibition.
We have a motion. Second. Okay, we have a motion to approve section 2.6.8 as read. Any discussion? Councilman Heitz?
Mr. Mayor and council members, 2.6.8 subsections 28 and new 29 address neon signs. The addition in the code is subsection 29, which reads, LED or other illumination shall not be used to create the look of neon tubes. As we went through at the workshop, I'm opposed to this additional restriction. We have right out in front of our building here, including Core 57, Shade, other places, folks who are using neon to great benefit, in my opinion. It is a subjective thing. And up till this point, our design review board, which is authorized by our charter to weigh in on these types of decisions, would be my understanding about what is and what isn't permissible, has done an outstanding job. But to lay down a blanket prohibition, I think it usurps the design review board and unduly limits the creativity of some of our businesses. And I do recall some entertaining exchanges of emails when this first came up in the workshop days about the tastefulness or lack thereof for LED looking or neon signs. But that being the case, when I see it around town, including inside storefront windows, I think most what I think of most is the sign that was inside the corner deli. That was in the storefront window, that neon sign saying it was open. That's Alpharetta to me. But I understand there's going to be a difference of opinion on that, but I will, as I did during the workshop, voice opposition to that additional limitation in the code.
And I'll come to you, Councilman Binder. I just have a quick question that didn't come up during the workshop, so before we vote on it, I'd like to clarify. Is there any way to make neon signs perhaps conditional that would have to be either approved by DRB or city council?
You could certainly make it conditional for that type of sign. Also, on the inside, they could still have an open sign behind the glass. I think that's one of the signs that you were talking about. This is for exterior.
And,
Right.
and I don't want to take the floor again, but
But you will. Councilman Heights.
just as a clarification about my comment,
Right.
you know, if neon is offensive, whether it's behind the glass or in front of the glass, it's either offensive or it's not. And I was trying to make the point as to whether or not it is or is not offensive, not whether or not it's permissible behind the glass.
Okay, and I just wanted to clarify, because I do believe that, you know, perhaps putting Airstream trailers on top of restaurants typically would not be something we'd like, but there might, in small doses, be value to having that opportunity at some times. But Councilman Binder had asked to speak next, and then Councilman Burnett.
Point of clarification for me, can you reread the motion for all of us?
Mayor Pro Tem?
Be glad to. Subsection 2. Motion to approve subsection 26.829, prohibited signs and devices prohibit neon signs with exposed neon lighting and any illumination used to create a neon tube look.
Was that your only question, Councilman Binder? Okay. Councilman Burnett?
Very briefly, Mr. Mayor, I don't want to be in the business of telling somebody what they can or cannot do, and I also don't want to take something or put something in the code that may become, there will be a day where neon is the most popular thing in the world. I don't see it, but it will happen. I've been around long enough to know that they all come back around, and I would just rather take the opportunity. While I appreciate the Pro Tem's enthusiasm for aesthetics and appreciate that, and I hope he forgives me, I cannot be supportive of this. Thank you.
Any other discussion from council at this time?
I can't resist. Yeah, it's very popular now at strip clubs, you name it, those kind of bars. It's very popular at all those places. Las Vegas, I just got back from there. It's very popular there, but it's not popular at places that the First Baptist might put a sign, a verse on the sign that might condone such things. So I think we have an upscale community. I've never seen neon used in a way that was upscale or anywhere resembling upscale. And this is not prohibiting the interior use of neon lights. It's only prohibiting the sign that most of our guests and citizens in the city see on a daily basis. And I think with the amount of money people invest in their properties here, this is not a major thing to ask. Thank you.
I believe everyone's had an opportunity to voice their opinions and comments on this item, so I'll go ahead and call for the vote to approve subsection 2.6.8, prohibited signs and devices prohibit neon signs with exposed neon lighting and illumination used to create a neon tube look. And the motion fails 4-2. I believe the next item we had discussed earlier to be taken up independently was item number 4. I'll entertain a motion for any of the above, but
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve section 2.6.11B6, illumination of signs, prohibit the use of neon to illuminate signs. This is a traditional neon lighting like you see at the aforementioned locales.
we have a motion. Do I have a second? We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell and a second by Councilman Merkel. This is for item identified number 4 on staff's report is to approve subsection 2.6.11 B6, illumination of signs, prohibit the use of neon to illuminate signs. Any discussion? All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And the motion is a tie, 3-3. So the motion does not pass.
With respect to the absence of one of our council members, I would like to make a motion to reconsider.
I'm not, I mean, we have a motion and a second to reconsider. I'm not sure what that accomplishes with only 6 of us
The
here.
motion to reconsider would properly be done at the next meeting to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think if you're wanting to give Councilwoman Richard an opportunity to discuss the item, that's probably the best procedure. So, but we had a motion and a second. Do you withdraw the motion? Is that possible?
Yeah, I'll withdraw it. Thank you.
Okay. I've never seen anybody have to withdraw a motion. Okay. So, based on the discussions we had earlier, we've taken up the 3 independent items we want to discuss individually. I'll entertain a motion for any of the remaining or all of the remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve these amendments, number 2, 5 through 13. Again, that's number 2, 5 through 13, a motion to approve these amendments to the Unified Development Code as it relates to the sign code.
Second.
I think Councilman Burnett had you on the second, but it was close. So we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell, second by Councilman Burnett. And I'll go through these. Those items identified were subsection 2.6.8, 26, prohibited signs and devices, reduce the maximum height of a monument sign from 15 feet to 10 feet. The next was item number 5, which is subsection 2.6.12A2 and subsection 2.6.12B2D, requirements for non-residential zoning districts, allow unused sign area for wall and perpendicular signs to be aggregated and distributed to a certain building elevation, but limited to no more than 2 wall signs and 1 perpendicular sign on the same building elevation and not internally illuminated. Next item was subsection 2.6.12A3, requirements for non-residential zoning districts, allow rear entrance wall sign to be a maximum 50% of the allowed front-facing wall sign. This is to address buildings that have front and rear pedestrian entrances and those with access from the Big Creek Greenway and future Alpha Loop. Subsection 2.6.12B1, reduce the maximum height of a monument sign to 10 feet or less. Remove subsection 1G, which allowed increased copy area when 1 or more of the monument signs otherwise permitted or foregone. Allow rear entrance wall sign to be a maximum 50% of the allowed front-facing wall sign. Subsection 2.6.12C1, signs permitted in industrial and office parks, reduce the maximum height of a monument sign from 15 feet to 10 feet, and reduce the permitted copy area of a monument sign from 150 square feet to 75 square feet. Subsection 2.6.12C2, signs permitted in industrial and office parks, allow a blade sign in lieu of a wall sign with a sign area not to exceed 50% of the allowable wall sign area. Subsection 2.6.12D1, add no digital copy is allowed for clarification. Subsection 2.6.12E6, change buildings of 3 stories to 2 stories are permitted to a wall sign at top of the freestanding commercial building. Subsection 2.6.12G, add maximum height of a monument sign not to exceed 6 feet and remove last sentence, which states the regulation does not apply if only changing sign face. Next one is 13, which was subsection 2.10.9, North Point overlay signs. Delete the subsection C regarding rear wall signs. Ms. Cobb, did you take down good notes for that? Any other questions?
Just comment, I do want to thank Pro Tem Mitchell on your work on this. I do think we're almost there, even some of the things that got a little bumpy tonight, I do think we're close to. So maybe we can take over time between now and the second reading to get there, and we can accomplish a lot of what you're talking about. And then since Brett's here too, I want to thank you and your staff. You guys just do a fantastic job day in and day out with code enforcement and making sure the signs we do have is good. And then I know you work real hard with the DRB and staff, making sure the signs are there. So I hope it is helpful to you. So just more of comments of thanking y'all for the work. And I do think we can get closer to, we're not as far apart as what it looked like on the stage. And I guess we're all really glad that Councilmember Richard will be back next week.
Any other comments? I'll just concur. I think we all value the difference that zoning and code enforcement has on our community, and we appreciate these refining of certain things, and we'll continue to work together to make it even better. So thank you. I appreciate it. That being said, all those in favor of the motion to approve as read a few minutes ago in depth, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it is passed unanimously. So that will wrap up item B, which was Unified Development Code text amendments for the signs. And we'll move on to the final item on public hearings this evening, and that is PH-19-28, Unified Development Code and Code of Ordinance text amendments, massage and spa establishment. Ms. Cook?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. This next item, although it looks like a lot of red up here, all we're doing is taking two codes that exist. We have the Unified Development Code, and we also have the Public Safety Ordinance that was actually passed in 2016, and we're just combining them. So we're not adding anything additional to the definitions that don't already exist at different locations in the city code and the city code of ordinances. What we're finding is, since those are different definitions, it's confusing for applicants if they go through one process for a conditional use, and then they go through the separate licensing provisions with public safety, and then there's different requirements regarding distances. So since code enforcement and community development took over in October for licensing for massage and spa services, we just want to combine those two ordinances. So that's what you're looking at. This first page is the definitions that already exist, combining those. And if there's not any questions about that, then I'll go on to the next change. But again, this doesn't have anything different than what already exists on the books.
Questions from council at this time? Councilman Hypes?
Does the 2,000-foot separation between businesses apply to both the massage and the spa?
We didn't have that in the code previously, but that could be something that's certainly added, because it is very similar to spa services, and as you know, we've had that in there, since the beginning of the spa service definition. So we could add that same language to massage therapy.
Has thought been given to whether that will be a benefit or a detriment? I think of some massage therapists are freestanding, some are associated with, say, chiropractic offices. There'll be chiropractic and massage therapy under one roof.
Right.
And and sometimes those businesses may be within 2,000 feet of each other. So I'm posing the question, I'm not suggesting a particular outcome.
Right, and there's exemptions for massage therapy businesses that do have a chiropractor, associated with chiropractor or doctor is running those businesses.
Do you recommend a
So those-
2,000-foot separation?
Right, so that, yes, so that it's similar to spa services. I think that's a good point to make those similar with the distance requirements. And just like you were talking about, if it's associated with a chiropractor or a doctor, it's not considered a massage therapy business. So we can add that in.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Thank you, Ms. Cook.
This is just a continuation of, making sure that all of the definitions match. There's nothing different than what I showed on that first page. So we'll make sure that if you want to put those same distance requirements with the 2,000 feet, that we'll get that put into the definition also. And then you can see that we just changed public safety to community development to make sure that that language coincides with which department's handling the license. And then on A, we are requesting removal of where it says on the last sentence, no more than 20 massage spa establishment license may be in effect at a time. This is something that actually the city attorney recommended that we remove. We have a lot of controls in there with the distance, a lot of different regulations with licensing. So having the max 20 is something that he recommended to remove. I don't know if you have any questions about.
I'm not seeing any questions at this time.
The next change that we have, this is actually number 14, which we didn't redline here. And this is it starts under section 10.279, which 10.279 talks about the license that's required. And of course, the massage and spa license is a different process that you go through besides getting a business license. So one of the requirements says that you have to have a copy of a $25,000 surety bond. We have found in the past, in talking with public safety also, that this has been difficult. It is very difficult to get surety bonds. We're recommending that that's removed, number 14, because we found that it's difficult for the small companies to be able to get those bonds. And I can, if it's okay, I'll redline that for the next reading also.
I'm not seeing anybody objecting or having any questions about that item.
Okay. And then I believe the rest is just changing community development, making sure that we remove the 20. Yes, I think that's it. Yeah, everything else is just matching up the definitions and removing the number 20. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
Any questions for staff at this time? Seeing none, Mr. Jones, would you please read the ordinance or the text amendments?
Mr. Mayor, this is an ordinance to amend Article 1 of the Unified Development Code and Article 9 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to amend the definition of massage therapy and spa services, to amend regulations related to massage and spa establishments, to repeal conflicting ordinances, and for other purposes.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if anyone would like to come forward and speak on this item, now's your chance to do so. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the PH-19-28 Unified Development Code and Code of Ordinances text amendments, massage and spa establishments, and that we add massage to the 2,000 distance requirement, so that it's the same in the UDC as with spas, and also in section 10-279-14, which requires a $25,000 bond for companies, to please remove that language.
Second.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell, a second by Councilmember Burnett. Any discussion? All those, no, not this time. The only reason I read it last time is because he didn't, I know. Got to be careful with sign ordinances, man. Those things will get us billboards if we're not careful with those. So all those in favor of the motion to approve the changes as recommended by staff by those two changes, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. Councilman Binder? All those in favor, please raise. There we go. And it does pass unanimously. Thank you once again. I appreciate staff's work on this. So that'll wrap up the public hearing for this evening. We'll move on to the old business portion of tonight's agenda. And the first item under old business is PH-20-08, Code of Ordinances, Text Amendments, Litter Ordinance. This is a second reading.
There are no
Cook?
changes since the first reading to the litter ordinance.
Any questions from staff on this item?
And Ms. Cook, just to reiterate, this is just so that we can bring our ordinance into compliance with the state ordinance. Is that
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council at this time? Seeing none, could you please read the ordinance?
This is an ordinance to amend Article 4, Chapter 26, the Code of Ordinances of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to amend the definition of litter, to amend violation fine amounts, to repeal conflicting ordinances, and for other purposes.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item? But if anyone here would still like to speak on this item, now's your chance to do so. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that we please approve the amendments to the Code of Ordinances as it relates to the letter and as read by our city attorney, Mr. Jones.
Second.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell. I think it might have been Councilman Merkel on the second there.
No.
We'll review the videotape and amend it next week. Any discussion about this item? All those in favor of the motion to approve PH-20-08 Code of Ordinances, Text Amendments, Litter Ordinance as read by the city attorney, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass unanimously. That'll wrap up the old business portion of tonight's meeting, and we'll move on to new business. New business, first item is resolution for National Endowment for the Arts, Our Town Grant. Ms. Cook, you're busy this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. The next item before you is consideration of approval to authorize staff to apply to the National Endowment for the Arts, Our Town Grant for $120,000. The request requires a 50% match. The funding would be used to design the proposed Gateway Park connection to the Alpharetta Greenway, excuse me, at North Point Parkway and Encore Parkway. And I'll put a larger picture up here. So here, of course, is where the Alpha Loop is going into Encore. Here's North Point Mall. So the grant request is to design how this will tie in at the end of Encore into the Big Creek Greenway. Of course, the North Point area served as an auto-oriented commercial district for Alpharetta and North Fulton County for decades. Development patterns and arterial road networks were designed to serve regional commuters and consumers, resulting in a district that lacks livability, a strong community identity, and a sustainable position in the competitive local and regional economy. So in order to further those goals of making it a walkable community, we're looking for different opportunities to apply for grants in order to be able to continue those goals that were in the LCI, as well as the creative placemaking plan. Like I stated, there's a 50% match, so it would be a $60,000 from the city for the match. And I'll answer any questions you may have regarding the request. And I did bring, just to remind you, with Falls Park on the Reedy in Greenville, South Carolina, at one time we looked at the area of the easement that we have that's at the end of Encore, and looked at Greenville. It's very similar, where you could create that tiered park going down into to the river. So very similar size, similar idea, where you have that area that's the gathering and event area, and very open to the greenway.
Thank you, Ms. Cook.
Yes.
Councilman Burnett, I believe you had a question.
Ms. Cook, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Should we be awarded the grant? When would we have to come up with our $60,000 from the city?
The grant application, the deadline is the end of August, and it says it takes about 60 days, so it would probably be, we wouldn't have to do it for mid-year, so it would be next year's budget.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council on this item? Thank you, Ms. Cook. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this?
We do not, sir.
However, if anyone here would love to come forward and speak on this item, now's your chance. I think there's still one member. However, she doesn't seem to be coming forward, so we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion on this item?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'd like the council to please approve on a resolution.
I'm sorry.
We just had a resolution.
Oh,
My apologies. Didn't mean to leave Mr. Jones out of that discussion.
Always forget me, Mr. Mayor.
I always do.
A resolution of the mayor, and this is a resolution of the mayor and council authorizing the submission of the National Endowment for the Arts, Our Town Grant, whereas the National Endowment for the Arts, Our Town Grant made funding available for arts engagement, cultural planning, or design of public space, whereas an application must be submitted for projects that integrate arts, culture, and design activities into the efforts to strengthen communities. And whereas the city of Alpharetta has prepared such an application for this program, and whereas the funding if awarded will be used to design the proposed Gateway Park connection to the Alpharetta Greenway and North Point Parkway and Encore Parkway, whereas the city of Alpharetta certifies and assures it has the funding available to finance the 50% match requirement of the submitted project budget, total of $120,000. Now, therefore, be it so resolved this 27th day of July 2020 by the mayor and council of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, the submission of the National Endowment for the Arts, Our Town Grant application is hereby approved, and if awarded, the mayor is hereby authorized to execute award package under the directives of the program.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Now do I have a motion from council?
yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the resolution authorizing the submittal of an application to the National Endowment for the Arts, Our Town Grant, to designate funds up to but not exceeding $60,000 for the required local match if the grant is awarded.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell and a second by Councilman Merkel. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve the resolution for National Endowment for the Arts, Our Town Grant, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass. 5-1. Next item up under new business is another resolution, which will be read by Mr. Jones. Resolution requesting sales tax information from the Georgia Department of Revenue, sponsored by Councilmember Burnett. Mr. Harris, I believe, at least according to my notes. Sorry, I didn't mean to wake you back there.
He only physically works here.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you is a resolution brought forward by Councilmember Burnett in his desire to see if we can get some sales tax information that would be helpful if down the road we looked at something like a MOST, but the reality is just to get information on the sales tax data of point of sale for how much sales tax are being generated in the city of Alpharetta. few years ago, there was a Senate Bill 371 or something like that that was passed. It looked promising, as if it was going to provide us a lot of information from the state, but as you look at the law and then look at the actual resolution that's before you, it does it does require that somebody is named as the individual who will see this data, but the actual data itself may not ultimately get us on the face of it where we want to go, but it does allow us to make a request of certain data. And the way I read the resolution and look at the state law, it's pretty limited, and based on one of the emails I got back also from the Department of Revenue, it pretty much would be information that would allow you to just be able to look at it, find a business and say, that business is in our city, are they on your tax, have they done a tax certificate, and is their address and tax number in our city, and you are collecting taxes at the state level, but there would be no revenues associated with that business shared with us, but that's it.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions from council? Mr. Jones, would you please read this resolution?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
I'm just writing bigger now to remind myself.
And this one's a tad bit longer. If I had known I was going to be the one reading it, not Sam, I would have made it shorter. But here we go. This is a resolution of the Mayor and Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, requesting sales tax information from the Georgia Department of Revenue pursuant to OCGA 48215D1, naming and designated officer for all related purposes, providing an effective date, and for other purposes. Whereas the City of Alpharetta, Georgia is a municipal corporation duly created by the General Assembly of the State of Georgia, and whereas Section 48215D1 as amended in 2018 in the Official Code of Georgia annotated authorizes the Commissioner of the Georgia Department of Revenue, upon request by resolution of a municipality such as the city or other local government, to provide to the designated finance officer or taxing official of the local government certain information relating to vendors, taxpayers that have submitted sales tax reports within the period of time set forth in that request. Whereas OCGA 48215D12B further allows the designated officer to request that the DOR Commissioner validate from time to time the political subdivision to which sales tax are being remitted by vendors, taxpayers within a business location within the city's boundaries. And whereas the city desires to obtain the aforementioned and described sales tax information to name a designated officer for all related purposes. Now therefore be resolved, and is hereby resolved by the Mayor and City Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, as follows. Section 1, the Mayor and City Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia hereby designate the following finance officer as the city's designated officer for all related purposes described in OCGA 48215D1, Thomas G. Harris, CPA, Director of Finance, 2 Park Plaza, Alpharetta, Georgia, 30009, tharris@alpharetta.ga.us. Section 2, the Mayor and City Council of the City of Alpharetta hereby request that the DOR Commissioner or his/her designee furnish the above named designated officer all vendor taxpayer sales tax information described in OCGA 48215D11 for the city for the following time period, July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. Section 3, in accordance with OCGA 48215D12B and following receipt of the information described in Section 2 above, the designated officer is hereby authorized to request validation by the DOR Commissioner of the political subdivision to which one or more vendors, taxpayers with a business location in the city have remitted sales tax for the designated period, with such validation request to contain the business name and location address of each such vendor, taxpayer, and such other information as may assist the DOR Commissioner in responding to such validation requests. Section 4. The designated officer shall use such information only in the discharge of his duties and shall maintain the confidentiality of such information as required by OCGA 48215D1. Section 5. The Mayor and City Council shall comply with all confidentiality requirements of OCGA 48215D1, including but not limited to the requirements that 1. Such information may only be discussed by the Mayor and City Council in executive session, and 2. In the event of a conflict of interest under OCGA 48215D14, the affected member of the City Council or the Mayor, as applicable, shall recuse himself or herself from such executive session discussions. Section 5.1, pursuant to OCGA 48215D14, a conflict of interest for the purposes of this resolution includes but is not limited to engaging in similar businesses to those which are identified in the confidential information, or having a financial or other personal interest, direct or indirect, in such matter which is incompatible with the impartial and proper discharge of that person's official duties, which would tend to impair the independence of that person's judgments or actions, or which would make such person privy to information that would provide a competitive business advantage. Section 6, this resolution shall become effective upon its adoption by the mayor and city council of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, and the official named above shall remain the city's designated officer for all purposes under SCGA 48215D1 until further action by the mayor and city council. And Section 7, the whereas recitals in this resolution are deemed to be a substantive part of this resolution and are incorporated herein as if fully restated. Section 8, all resolutions and parts of resolutions in conflict with this resolution are hereby repealed to the extent of such conflict. Section 9, the city clerk is hereby directed to provide a certified copy of this resolution in the Georgia Department of Revenue via email to public.disclosure@dor.ga.gov or to otherwise transmit a copy of this resolution as may be directed by the Georgia Department of Revenue. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any questions about that now that it's been read? Seeing none. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if anyone here would love to come forward and speak on this item, now's your chance. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution requesting sales tax information from the Georgia Department of Revenue as read by Mr. Jones.
We have a motion by Councilman Burnett, second by Councilman Merkel. Any discussion? Councilman Burnett? Mike?
The goal of this exercise, it's been long speculated by the city of Alpharetta that it is to our advantage to know what the sales tax data is from a point of sale reference point. It's also helpful to us as we enter into local option sales tax negotiations, potential T-SPLOS 2 negotiations, and then potentially for a day that was out there where we could potentially look at an alternative way to potentially assessing property taxes on our residents by alleviating that and potentially putting it on a point of sale or something should that day ever come. I think we have our doubts whether the Department of Revenue will choose to turn over the sales tax data, but it was very clear when Atlanta passed a municipal option sales tax that it was possible. And so for them to do that for a city within Fulton County and for them to not do it for us or potentially Sandy Springs or other cities that are out there so that we could effectively negotiate agreements after the new census numbers come out is just, it would be irresponsible for this council to not look at it. You know, the one thing that we all agree on is taking absolute care of our residents and making sure that the people who live here have the opportunity to, you know, get the best deal. And so by asking for this information, you know, I think it's a worthwhile fight, and I think that it will be a fight. Thank you.
Any other comments? I'll just say that I appreciate Councilman Burnett bringing this forward. I do think this is data that, in a data-driven world, we need information like this to make good decisions as elected officials responsible for this community. So I think we should have access to this information. And actually, I see Representative Chuck Martin has joined us this evening, and today I was discussing it with him, and he said he would certainly champion our cause and help us get this information if possible. So I do support it. If there's no other comments, I ask that we take a vote on the motion to approve the resolution as read by City Attorney Jones about the resolution requesting sales tax information from the Georgia Department of Revenue. All those in favor of that motion, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass unanimously. So that'll wrap up the new business portion of our meeting this evening. Next up will be public comment. So the person here that is not an elected official or a staff member, if they'd like to come forward, now is their opportunity to do so. No one's rushing down, so we'll close public comment. Do we have any reports this evening? Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Merkel.
As usual, Morgan Rogers and his gang came to the calling this time for the skateboarders. So for those of you that have heard or have seen or haven't seen, this Friday at 2 o'clock, we're going to do a ribbon cutting or a designation or however we want to put it for the new skate park, which is the pop-up skate park at Union Hill. park in the outdoor rink. They did an amazing job. I mean, I had no idea what to expect, but I went out there the other day and looked at it, and they put together a pretty cool place. So if you are available Friday at 2 o'clock, come on out and help us celebrate the start of the new pop-up skateboard park.
Thanks, sir. Councilman Binder.
Before I begin my report, I want to make sure if there's any video of Councilmember Merkel doing any skateboarding tricks, please send it to our way, Morgan. No, just, we've received Fulton County reports on the COVID situation, and we started last week at 179 cases over the 14-day period, over 100,000 residents to 228. Schools announced that they wouldn't start in-class sessions till it went below 100. So I know Mr. Regas is going to come up and speak, but maybe on August 10th, we can set up a workshop to hear more about and have a discussion of what we're going to do in the fall. Mostly concerned about our employees and taking care of kids while they're coming to school. I know we talked about that earlier, and just anything we can do, but just maybe more of a workshop setting to see what we can do as we head into this fall. So thank you all for what you've been doing, and it's been great so far, and the response, and I think we're going to need more of it in the long term over the fall.
Any other council reports? Mr. Regas, you have the floor.
I usually give an update on operations, and but tonight I wanted to give a service award for 20 years to James Drinkard. So, yeah.
Here, here.
Yeah. James doesn't like this, but you know, the big 2-0. So James, no long speeches or anything, but the great thing about James is you give him something to do and he owns it. He just literally owns the thing, and so I just love that. We've had, James, how long have we worked together? When did you come from community development?
That would have been 12 years ago, sir.
Yeah, a long time ago, so time does fly. So anyway, come on over here, and you know, we'll stand 6 feet apart, and here's the pin.
Thanks, sir.
The award and the check.
Just throw it over.
Yeah, so, Mayor, you have a-
If I could, I just want to say, James, I'm glad you wear a coat all the time because it covers up the holes from all the arrows you take for us. Because whenever there's a good thing and we want to get interviewed or there's questions about a good thing, James kindly hands them off to me or one of the liaisons on council. But when they start throwing daggers, he's the one that jumps in front of the camera for us. And you do a lot of great things for the city, but that's the one I appreciate the most personally, is because it's tough. And you do a great job at it, and we do appreciate it.
Thanks, sir. Thanks, Mayor. All right, just proud to be part of the team. You know, I've never been the best player on any team I've been on, but I've always been on the best teams. And we've got the best team here, and I'm proud to be part of it. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to the citizens for allowing me to serve. Thanks, James. Thank you. I'll send the rest of the report in an email to y'all. We had a great week in community development, over 500 inspections, and you know, we've been calling these things out, you know, for the last few months, and really gets us all to appreciate what the staff does day in and day out. Pete's crews, you know, they do over 40 work orders, and so I'll be putting a little bit of verbiage on what that means, you know, in an email to y'all. So, Mayor, that's it.
Thanks, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have an executive session to discuss a personnel item this evening, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session.
Motion to adjourn into executive session, Mr. Mayor.
We have a motion by Councilman Merkel, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell. All those in favor of the
Friendly
motion?
for 3 minutes?
Yes.
Maybe not 3. I know. So, but we have a motion to adjourn into executive session. All those in favor of the motion, please vote yes. And it does pass unanimously. Thank you, everyone who came and participated this evening, and we will now ask to clear the room so that we can hold our executive session in a socially distanced manner. Thank you, and we will see you all next time.